So can you see my screen?
Several of them.
Oh shit, I think I got into fractal mode.
No, it was working again.
Yeah. Okay, so, okay. I'm sorry, I'm just going on people's. I need feedback. Okay, so it's the first slide. This talks about a tool for assets for mutual credit. Half of the talk, I'm going to be sort of relaying my experience and how I arrived at the point where I thought this would be a good idea. So start with I was in a state a few years back where I was kind of in this position where I felt like an individual, couldn't have any meaningful change. The community circle in the middle was lacking. So I was like, okay, let's try and find a community. So then I had this vision of a place where people are supported and their lower level survival problems are not always on their mind. This kind of allowing people to focus on self-transcendence. That's the point of it. Yeah. So then I stayed in a community hub for a year, which was a great experience. The hub came with benefits, but everything was free. Free building, free living spaces, free energy, water, heating, Wi-Fi. It was a gift economy. It was kind of an experiment, and we were lucky to have this building. But our currency in this situation was time. We had no system to account for things like cooking, cleaning. People just gifted their time to take care of these things, to take care of the building. And it was a very enriching experience. It's affected me profoundly. Of course, capitalism, there's some pictures of the place. Of course, capitalism destroyed it, and then these business people came and demolished the place and turned it into small apartments with high rental fees. But it left me with this sense of purpose of how could I transition into an alternative economies for hub-like communities. And so I went on this kind of research investigation, and these kind of diagrams are helpful for me, where I look at what spheres actually affect our reality, and try to sort of analyze where I could use my skills to make a change in a culture, not just in a culture, in a kind of a permaculture way, pro-eco, pro-social, with sustainability in mind. So I'm ready to experiment, and with that, I looked at mutual credit, and my thinking behind mutual credit is, okay, so we may have a gift economy in the center, but perhaps there's a web of trust in that community. Beyond that community, in the external field, in the locality, there are people who could could connect, could be part of the network, and so a kind of transition layer, if you will, where we don't want to use money. We want to use something which enables people to form kind of bonds and peer communities of common interest. So that this is my thinking, is that we use kind of mutual credit, or it's a like for like system for specific assets and services, and we tie those asset classes to a unit of account, and it's a kind of a way of doing things vertically, so that you don't have this universal unit of account, which is the dollar or the euro, but you have a credit which can be used for this asset class. And this has the effect of moving people into a real economy, of something that is visible, a service, right? So it also has this effect of promoting gifts and favors. So they're moving into how can we innovate mutual credit with technology. So what kind of systems can we create? That's the next train of thoughts. How would we create a system to give people the power to create their communities, currencies, avoid this surveillance capitalism issue, can maintain control over their personal data, and then have the option to choose transparency, to give show provenance, and this concept also of folksonomy, where you don't impose a structure on classification structure, so you allow people to expand in ways which you wouldn't expect. This is a nice effect of that. And then participating in self-healing networks for pro-social behavior. Yeah. So these are the kind of how of the technological shift I see. Yeah. So then enter Mutualize. Next table. So this is the kind of underlying technology behind it. So distributed hash table, distributed ledger technology, got from blockchain, web UI. A membrane architecture, so each asset class is its own network. This is important so that people join just to exchange in this asset, and they have the option to then leave or create a new one of the same asset, similar asset. And asset also encompasses service in this kind of language. So then here's a list of rules we've come up with for the system. Anyone can create mutual credit assets to declare a name, description, unit of account. We're going to have a ranking. It has a membership granted when you make a first exchange. Users are able to, as I said before, fork from networks into more specific mutual credit networks, and bridge back, so that if it's a kind of like for like in the unit of account, such as teaching or something in an hours metric, so you give hours for hours, kilometers for kilometers in mobility. So that's the thinking behind that. I'm not going to go to the demo because just like there hasn't been enough time today, and I already had too many technical issues. So this is a screenshot of the prototype. Already made some exchanges with Roberto there, and that's it. Q&A. Yeah, Q&A, and there's some other ideas we came up with for discussion points.
Hi, Thomas. Thank you very much for this. Can I can only change like for like, right, in the system?
Yeah, at the moment, that's the design. But again, the idea in the future may be to allow
I have so many questions. I cannot kind of choose. So I just wanted to make that comment. I'm sure the conversation emerges and something will come up.
Thomas, are you familiar with Arthur Brooks' work on wealth and?
I'm listening to you that way.
Sorry, what was the question?
Are you familiar with Arthur Brooks' work on currencies and I don't know if I have my camera on, currencies and wealth and holochain and that stuff? Are you familiar with that? Arthur Brooks, holochain.
Greatly inspires me. The technology is based on holochain. I probably should have mentioned that in my slides. Yeah, this is a. Can you see my slides?
No.
Well, yeah, the technology is based on that, so it's
okay, perfect.
The old version of the new version of holochain now, and the new version which is much faster.
Okay, I'll start with a question, Thomas. Would you be able to go in a train of thought of how a community, let's say this Kabanga village here or our city, can start utilizing the application to serve our community? And you can I'll make a quick note on it. Not necessarily on the Horizon 1. Let's assume that technology can be built to unlimited capabilities or whatever that might be. So Horizon 3, let's imagine it at that level. Can you give me some train of thought? How would that be utilized in our situation?
Yeah, so I think you're looking more in the field of supply chain, right, Alban? So this is about accounting for resources. That's the area you're interested in? I remember we had a discussion on was a food network that you were implementing.
We are trying to do all different kind of applications, but on this particular question, I'm interested on actually implementation of the technology that the mutual credit. So it doesn't matter. You can hypothetically speak about any situation. It doesn't really have to be about our community. It can be about your community. Just I want to have a sort of real case use scenario, just to have like mutual credit. It seems simple, but a lot of people have a very hard time on conceptualizing what it actually is and how it works. And it's not easy. Like when you mention a unit of account, it's a unit of account, but when you start thinking about it, it's much more complicated than just a unit of account. So my question is, just give me a hypothetical use case of the technology.
Yeah. So the hypothetical use case, well, there are many.
Thomas, if you like,
Roberto's one.
yeah, if you don't
Sorry?
mind, I can give it a little bit of a answer.
Roberto, please. Sure.
Yeah. So at first, sorry to be in the dark, but just imagine me. At first, we want to apply this here at Liminal Village and experiment that directly. And indeed, as you say, as soon as you start using it, a new question come to mind, right? For instance, a mutual credit you give to a network of trust. So say that we do have a car, and we can borrow this car to the people within the community. Then how do you account? Well, we decide we account by kilometer. So, okay, we're going to, if you do use a card, you are going to use it by kilometer. So it is convenient for you maybe to share the ride. So that comes automatically, right? Because then you have the credit that you need to spend on that. But also, what happens if somebody crashes it, or even worse, simply takes the car and run away with it? Right? I mean, it's a community of trust, but then what happens in the extreme cases? So indeed, before we were talking about the solution of insurances and other solution that we can apply, for instance, taking the screenshot of how many kilometers are in there and attach that screenshot to each of the transactions. But in practice, my wish is to run a local experiment with that and see how that shapes. And immediately after that, we have a local community here of parents that have come together and built an education center for kids. And the way that has been built is that every single person puts together its skills, its excess materials, and its time, and they come together, and in a month time, they turned a place into an education center. We got chairs, we got tables, we got toys, whole handmade. It's incredible. So the idea would be to apply what we learn here to this community and see how we can extend the same ideas of just people coming together and sharing their assets to achieve anything they want to achieve. And it could even be all the way up to building a spaceship, right, in Horizon 3. But it's really about how do we bring these people together into a network of trust and starting to exchange these services to each other and to build anything that they wish to build. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, to some extent, yes. That was I understand. Could you give a run at the train of thought, Thomas, using the harvesting app, the farming app? How would that be utilized in that particular case on a community that is trying to share their crop?
Yeah, well, I guess you want to have a web of trust, so that from the first standpoint, you have no accounting. Like people are like, I did this for you, do this for me. We don't need to make an accounting. We need to put it into a computer or whatever. But then you get to a point where you're extending that field, extending that web with people you don't know, but you want to exchange with. So then you create a system which tracks those exchanges, so that if there's a bad actor, then if somebody abuses the system, you have some record of what went wrong, and it is some kind of level of accountability, right? So then, if you're with this food network, you're exchanging, I don't know, whatever it is. They have this. They can see in the system the transactions between the participants, and they can see this person is in credit to this other person. Actually, if the one way is to do it transparently, where people see everyone's transactions. Another way is to do it on kind of private base, where you only see the transactions between yourself and others. So in that case, you have to have additional validation in the system, so that people play by the rules, and those transactions are verified. So I don't know if that answers your question, Alban, but anyone else who wants to jump in, go ahead.
I could obviously, we're trying to collaborate with you on this project, and our space is open for that project all the time, and our contribution towards it as much as we can. So the way, if someone has something to say, please interrupt me, because I'm just making comments because I feel like there's no one else that's making comments. But I can give my particular scenario, so I can answer my version of that question that I posed. So in that particular case, we're trying to build this harvesting app, sort of an application that assists farmers markets to be more effective. And I'm not going to go too much into that, but that's pretty much the idea. So there's already communities that do farmers markets, and there's already communities that use technology to improve their farmers markets. And the community that I'm referring to, and I think you guys all know, it's Reco Rings. And there's some that I know in the Reco Rings use Facebook in reality, and there's some communities I know in Catalonia, they use WhatsApp text messaging, like they really text with each other in text WhatsApp groups. What I'm implying with this is that the technology they're using is not tailored to serve that purpose. It doesn't make their flow very efficient, so it causes them problems to expand, problems in efficiency, and so on. Not even going through Facebook and all that problem, and not having their own information, and there's so many other problems that I think you guys all know. So we're trying to build this application and give this application for free. I'm going to go quickly through this process so this community can start using this application. And I think this could be easily done because from the builder perspective, we don't have an invested interest on the application. So it doesn't sustain us financially. The application is a commons. So they can start using it without really knowing who built it, without really relating to us at all. like we're trying to build it with using holochain in this decentralized way, so they can utilize that version. We're gonna try to build it on a centralized way in case some community doesn't want to use the new paradigm, complicated, hard to conceptualize technologies. So what I'm trying to say with that is that it's very possible to bootstrap within a community. Now, this application would automatically allow few means of exchange. So the current money, like you can choose someone, let's say you're trying to buy 10 kilos of tomatoes, you can actually buy those 10 kilos of tomatoes in dollars, the way they use Venmo now, most of these places. However, the idea now with mutual credit is to actually attach mutual credit as an option of payment as well. And that would only work, I guess, on relationships, on that trust. So there's already some trust building within these farmers markets, virtual farmers markets. I want to express that these are kind of localized farmers markets. So there's some trust that's already enabled, already existing in there. So this can start generate, because there's an economy, local economy already being generated through the Harvest app. It's much easier for this mutual credit to kind of bootstrap into it and start removing some of that exchange from currency-based money to mutual credit-based exchanges. So it becomes the bootstrapping becomes much easier. This is how I think of it so far. And now it wouldn't, because it's just some local economy that's happening in it. If someone, for example, is not buying food, or it's from someone, and the producer is not relating or getting anything from the buyer, then it hinders mutual credit exchanges because there's nothing to get from that person. So now what becomes very useful is actually bringing other local economies into that network. So another application that we're thinking on is our transport. So, which is like a ride sharing application that is, again, no vested interest for them from the developers themselves. They can take this application and call it whatever the fuck they want to call it. There's no control from our movement into that application. We're just building it. That's as simple as that. It's Commons application. They can use it for any purpose they want to. Technically not for any purpose, but they cannot use it for privately appropriated profit, which we'll get later into this topic, I think. But so when you bring in this transportation now, instead of me actually going to the farmer's market, or instead of the producer take the foods to the farmer's market, it can start interconnecting this transport application in that process. So now I don't just buy food from you, but I can have it delivered from someone that happened to drive from your area to my area and deliver this for me, which generates even more local economic activity, which empowers the mutual credit exchange schema even further. So I think you get my point that I'm trying to create. That the more local economy you can generate, the more you support the mutual credit exchanges within. Yeah, this was my ranting on how I see this implementation of this thing and bootstrapping of this thing.
Yeah, I mean, the key point to mention there is the locality, right? So the idea is localizing things. So you're not ordering something from China or strawberries from Brazil or some shit. The localization aspect is about efficiency where it's possible, so that we're more sustainable as humans, right? And I see us, if you're living in closer communities, we're more likely to have access economy. So not everyone needs a power drill, right? So one person in the community has a power drill, people borrow it. We can create tool libraries. All of these things. This is kind of like a step. I see it's transition steps, and the more people that get involved, the more likely it might happen. Right? So I'm looking forward to experiments.
But I think that's definitely something local, because you will have different values among different countries in terms of resource weights, let's say, in terms of needs, in terms of availability.
Roberto?
Yeah, I completely agree, and also the potentially the food market and the transportation. It's indeed one of the easiest and access, because everybody kind of needs it, and there are already ways to do that. The idea, though, is that every credit represents one asset, and in the concept of taxonomy, it's about creating a network of these assets. So you can just call a mutual credit transportation by kilometer or food, but you can also create it as eggs, which is like a subclass of food, but it doesn't matter. Somehow people will find a ways to eggs. And this is, we call this layer one, where everything is backed by an asset. On top of layer one, okay, 1 hour of time, 1 hour of time you get back. One tomato you get back. But then there is one specific asset that we call the M asset. M asset is money. We don't want to call it money because otherwise people get confused. And then, there are some connotations there. But you can actually say, I give you this piece of paper, whatever is written in there, and I want the same back. That's almost like lending, right? When you go to layer 2 solutions, then the layer 2 is how much of asset 1 can you exchange for asset 2. And that's also very important, the locality, because of course that depends on the availability of this asset. The 1-for-1 does not depend on the availability of the asset. The 1-for-1 is just true because it's physics. I hope you get that part. On the second layer, when we say how much I will accept to give 10 tomatoes if somebody would drive me for 1 kilometer. So we will allow people to create these exchange proposals and be able to add an example on how you can turn one asset into the other. So it's pretty much what's happening right now with DeFi with tokens, but now tokens are actually backed by real assets. So we will let the market economy play a role in how much exchange you can have. But remember, you can also exchange each of these assets for the M asset. That means, like, I can give you a ride for 10 kilometers for 10 of the M asset. So right now we have both the system at the same time running. It's a mutual credit, which includes also an asset, which is called M, and you can exchange whatever you can do with that asset. The beauty of that is that you're not only integrating the existing system, which people can recognize and is familiar. This is how much a tomato costs right now. Probably the M asset exchange would be more or less the market exchange rate. But it means that you can also participate if you don't have any of that. You can participate by giving asset directly. And if you want, via a system of exchange, turn that into the M asset. So it's both end, as Josh would like to say.
I understand that. Is that the Credit Commons fellas that are trying to connect that as well? Does that do you have any comment on that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure. Could you repeat?
Credit Commons. So there's Matthew Slater. It's one of the guys. Bill Green, and there's a few other people that are working on this. Obviously, all these different currencies. How do you interconnect them all? How can I know mutual credit as a design? It supports local economies, but however, we live in a globalized place, and I do want a computer. You know, so as an end solution, I can still end up getting a computer from China through M that you're referring to, and then back to that computer.
Yes, that's possible, but as every step of the value chain, so there is, layer 0 is the asset-backed mutual credit, but as you go higher in the levels, you actually get exchange levels, and then you actually since they are resource-backed, when you're actually shipping something to and from China, you will have to consider that amount into the true cost or the true price of what you're trying to achieve. If you always potentially do your exchange, turn that into money credit in the M credit, and then turn that into money and go buy a Apple from the Apple Store, which was made in China. But that's pretty much like outside of the system, right? You actually left the system and then made that purchase. And the process of being within the membrane and leaving the membrane is actually what's interesting there. So how much would you be able to turn your contribution into money that industry?
Right.
No.
I understand that's an interesting topic as well, but what I was keep low on the time. I'm people actually using credit and producing computers like, I don't know, Apple, probably Apple, but it could happen with, I don't know, Pine Book or some other organization that builds, that's trying to make computers on alternative. But I do see I like the conversation, but this is very technical.
In general, if you want to integrate with other mutual credit, you can wrap them. You can create any mutual credit you like. So you can just say, oh, this is one-to-one with that asset, with that other mutual credit. So you can just easily integrate. But indeed, maybe somebody else would like to ask something to Thomas as well.
And before someone takes it, that's why I brought Credit Commons, because those are the people that are actually wrote a very good white paper, kind of have a solution for this interconnectivity. I'll post it on the chat.
I have a question on the mutual credit, the asset-backed currencies. What is the advantage over use? Or could it just simply work with IOUs?
Sorry, I missed that question. Was that a question for me?
I'd say you or Roberto.
Yeah, IOUs effectively a similar thing, right? But we put it into. I think here the technology is the enabler here. So we're trying to do something. We're trying to innovate from the past, where we have people that can track this thing on a cell phone. They can see who can help them. Eventually, we want to evolve the system into offer requests, exchanges on people voice their needs. So there'll be like multilateral exchanges. So the technology really is the enabler for that, and that's where. Yeah. Sorry.
I think Thomas, I think the difference between the IOU just normal and what you are building is the ledger. So it's a big bundle of IOUs together. So it's based in the ledger, which makes it traceable back to every transaction that was ever made. So that's probably a big difference with just giving you an IOU.
Yeah, exactly. We're using a ledger here so that every transaction is stored and people can verify that ledger.
Yes. Let me clarify maybe my question a little more. So my question was, let's say in a community, we can have like different currencies, as you were saying, maybe one for food, we can have for transportation, and so many others. What's the advantage as opposed to actually only having one community currency, which IOUs, as in it's still stored and traceable in a ledger, but it's just one currency. I just want to understand what's the advantage of currency.
I think we're trying not to reinvent fiat. In a sense, we don't want one current universal currency, because then we get into these issues of markets and like we see this effect where the real economy is artificially impacted by something which doesn't really tie to real resources. And so the closer we can keep a credit to one thing, I think the less we have issues with that. But I agree. In some cases, you want a mutual currency that covers many different services or assets, and that's just another option. And I mean, for me, it's all experiments until I can see the results of a system. I can only speculate on what would happen. So for me, the beginning is to start vertical, same unit account, and see how that works out, and then potentially move on to multi-asset exchange. Yeah.
Thomas, hi. Could I add a little bit to that?
Oh, hi, Guillaume. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah.
Guillaume's
Yeah,
a fellow holochain guy. Please bring your input.
Yeah. So just a little bit of context. I'm collaborating with Thomas a little bit on the backend side of holochain things around Reddit. So I think one of the important differences between having only one community currency or one IOU system is that with different mutual credits, you can set different parameters for those mutual credits. Like mutual credits have these positive and negative credit limits. So for example, you can set in a network that nobody can go down 100 negative credit limit or up a positive number. And what's more interesting is that you can make those dynamic. And you can say, okay, people that have this level of reputation can go more negative. Or people that have produced more value can go more negative. And this really depends on the type of asset you are working. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to say, okay, farmer, here is your unified community currency that everyone is going to use, but then we are going to adjust a dynamic credit limit for you in that currency, then it's much more elegant to let expand those and let them be different currencies, so that the different currencies can have different rules and so different flows between that community and between different communities.
Thanks, Guilherme, for the input. But it still applies the same thing. We can still have those credit limits be dynamic, even for community currencies. Even though it's a monoculture, it can still have the same things. Obviously, just tracking, it's not really tracking one asset. It's pretty much being a universal currency. But yeah, we can have the same rules.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you can have multiple community currencies with the same rules, but if you want a particular dynamic, like for example, the type of mutual credit that comes to mind is Holo. So Holo is basically selling computing power in a cloud net. So for that, you really need a specific currency, because what you're doing is, okay, the ones that are providing the value, those will be the ones that will have the negative credit limit dynamically go down, right? So you cannot do that if we have monoculture, only one community currency, because like the logic of the application doesn't work in that way, because if you have a global unified, you don't even know what the people of the community are transacting, and you have to implement a whole lot of generic themes on top of that. And then the other thing also is the membranes and privacy. Sorry, I'm talking a little bit of holochain vocabulary. I hope you are a little bit familiar with that. Otherwise, membranes are who is allowed to play in this community. And if you have multiple membranes, as Thomas said, this is what we are looking at, then you can have both transparency and privacy at the same time, because only the ones that are inside the community are able to participate and interact, but no one else from the outside can look in. But you can define rules around that as you want. So that's another important thing.
Guys, just keeping an eye on the time. We drifted off a little bit, and I think we're drifting back on again. So now is Polto and Ome's talk on the incentive is bullshit. There's Polto, I'm sure Ome's about. And Federico is also going to do a talk. So I'm thinking incentive is bullshit might be a good. Let's just do it in here, and Federico can do it in the divergence room. So if you want to do the incentive is bullshit, that's in this room. And if you want to do renewing economics, that's going to be in the divergence room with Federico. Okay.
Can we get a small intro on the two? Just small from each of the participants?
Yeah, that's probably cool. Thomas, can you mute, please? Thank you. It's all right, it's just echoing. So the incentive is bullshit. We'll be talking about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, most likely. I can't say for sure, although Alto and Ome would probably be able to speak to that better. And Federico's one is a presentation and open questions about simulating potential futures. I guess so it's kind of similar to Sam's, but on an economic basis, particularly, although I missed a lot of that, so I can't really say. Neither of them are in here. Is he? Where?
FedEx.
Oh yeah, he is. Yeah, there's Polto there. So maybe Polto can talk on that, and I'm going to go find Federico wherever he. Oh, there he is. He's just appeared.
Cool. Thanks, guys, for listening to my talk and discussion. One love.
Thanks for that as well, Tom. Sorry to interrupt. The two people that are doing stuff are currently loading on screen. There's Poldo. When Federico comes,
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, you guys just get started in here. I'll get Federico on in a moment.
Someone soldering.